Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Today is the 10-year anniversary of the death of Rebecca Zahau. On July 13th, 2011, Rebecca Zahau was found and pronounced dead by first responders called to the Spreckles mansion in Coronado, California, the home of a billionaire, Jonah Shacknai. The San Diego Sheriff Bill Gore announced on September 2nd, 2011 that Rebecca's death was a suicide, while the younger child's death, Max Shacknai, was ruled an accident, and that neither was the result of foul play. But then the Zahau family disputed this finding. They filed a $10 million wrongful death lawsuit against Jonah Shacknai's brother Adam. The jury in the civil trial found Adam Shacknai responsible for Rebecca's death and granted her family a $5 million judgment for loss of love and companionship, as well as an additional $167,000 for the loss of financial support Zahau would have provided her mother and siblings. In May 2018, about 7 years after the crime took place, I wrote my first book in the Red Rope series dealing with what happened to Rebecca, and then I followed that up with a second book. Now, I want to read the review left by Kathleen McKenna-Hudson, the author of All My Broken Pieces and an upcoming book on the Chris Watts case, a book that's coming out actually in the next couple of weeks. She's actually sent me an advanced copy. In any event, Kathleen Hudson left this review in December 2018. She wrote, "It takes huge nerve to write about this case. 7 years in, and yes, there are answers, but no one till him, myself included, has had the nerve to even attempt to put it in print. I saw one person said Jonah wasn't a billionaire. Oh, yes, he is. And just a little bit litigious too. You know, many years ago when all of us were on the case, the files were also given to Anne Rule, the true crime writer, but even that wonderful woman stopped at the door. Everybody's interested, but no one has had the nerve to write it. Kudos to him. People want to know about this murder." And so what's quite interesting is on the 10-year anniversary, another book has come out by another author, and this time someone that's an investigative journalist from Coronado, actually, and a journalist that was sort of, I think, a reporter on the case at the time. And I'm going to go through an article from CBS 8, from sort of a local news site from San Diego, and I'll put a link to that news article in the description. The article refers to a new book detailing the mysterious death of Rebecca Zahau nearly 10 years after she was reported hanging at the Spreckles mansion. It's a 368-page book titled Death on Ocean Boulevard, Inside the Coronado Mansion Case. And it's written by a former San Diego Union Tribune investigative reporter. She spent 5 weeks in San Diego's civil court, where a jury found Adam Shacknai liable in 2018 for the death of his brother's girlfriend. Rother conducted 8 interviews with Zahau's billionaire boyfriend. That definitely counts for something. You know, one-on-one interviews with Jonah Shacknai. So he was a billionaire and Rebecca was his girlfriend, quite a young girlfriend as well. And she also went through thousands of pages of investigative reports. Despite her in-depth research, Rother is still undecided on whether the death was a suicide or a murder.
I'm not sure that we'll ever know, honestly. I mean, I went back and forth the whole time that I was investigating this book, and I would be, never 100% sure either way.
So I've not read Caitlin Rother's book. I have actually ordered it, and I've heard reports from someone else that has read it, which I think is quite interesting. I do think it's a bit of a cop-out to sort of walk that sort of tightrope where you say, I'm not really sure what happened here. I think you've got to have an opinion, but I do understand that in this particular case, to express your opinion could open you up, or your publisher, to litigation. So one wonders whether her being explicit about that is in order to cover herself and also the publisher. The author also talks about her husband killed himself by hanging, which I suppose gives her some insight into the situation. I have to say as well, my mother committed suicide. And I think that suicide is also the intentional murder of oneself. And I think there are obvious signs and symptoms in someone who is suicidal, just as there are obvious motives in someone who is going to commit murder. You know, there's an obvious motive in suicide and also in murder, and one's got to look at that. To me, it doesn't really make any sense that Rebecca would do what she did while Max was still alive. If she did it after Max had died, that could be a different story. I mean, was the death of 6-year-old Max Shacknai relevant to Rebecca's on July 13, 2011? The tricky part is that Max fell and was still alive when Rebecca died. Max then died of his injuries 2 days later, 2 days after Rebecca died. Also, Rebecca was known to have said via text just before her death, "I need to be strong for Jonah." Jonah was quick to ascribe Rebecca's death as suicide due to what he called Asian honor. Asian honor is a real thing, but the ease at which he came up with that to Dinah, I believe, I think that was his ex-wife, was a little bit, I think, callous and convenient. When Rebecca's body was exhumed and a second autopsy was performed by Dr. Cyril Wecht determined the cause of death to be manual strangulation, not death by suicidal hanging. Damage to Rebecca's hyoid bone indicated the classic injury for death by manual asphyxiation. Shanann Watts had a similar injury. Wecht determined Zahau's death was a homicide along with other inaccuracies in the Sheriff Department investigation. For example, there was reason to believe Zahau was sexually assaulted before her death. Now, it's difficult to imagine that Zahau was sexually assaulted and then committed suicide. The sexual assault and the murder seem to hold hands better in that respect. As I say, I was the first author to write about the Zahau case 7 long years after it happened, and I will leave a link in the description if you guys are interested in purchasing either of the books in my Red Rope series. You can read the reviews. Both of them have been pretty well reviewed. I think the second book has only 5-star reviews. If you just totally unfamiliar with the Zahau case, I'll put a link to the Wikipedia page, and you can get a sense of the incredible intrigue surrounding this case. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.